Good morning. So last week I was at the ocean, and wave after wave of thoughts and words started to come into my brain, begging the question, what is this thing that I call me? Is it the form and the function, the emotions and the actions? Is it the DNA? I came to the conclusion, for me, and I think for Unity, that we all share the same eternal DNA. This is called Stardust and Magic. If we're all just stardust, galactic energy, then what is it that I am, this thing that I call me? Is it the particles that made our human form, the angles and the curves? Or is it our personality and the bundles of our nerves? Are we governed by our fate or the conditioning that we receive? Or do we make our own rules according to what we believe? Though it seems a contradiction, all these things apply. But the stardust you are made of is magic. Trust it. Give it a try. This galactic energy is part of a loving universe. And even with the mistakes we make, we can write another verse. Don't waste your energy or your time. Make amends where you must. Dream and love and dance again in universal trust. You're a child of the Creator. Let your starlight shine. And know that what we refer to as me is the essence of the divine.
How a service comes together without any of us talking to each other. It's exactly how our lives come together without us talking to each other, if we pay attention. Jeff Tresler, thank you. Jeff has several books out. Some of you that are familiar with Unity know about James Dillard Freeman, and he was, they call our poet laureate. His poems went to the moon. Jeff, I see you. I see you following in those footsteps. We will make your poetry known. This is a very, very special Sunday. And if you are sitting in this sanctuary today, it is part of your soul's journey. Today, there is a shift. And you're sitting here. And that means you are part of it. And that means you are being called not to play small anymore. That you are being called to be part of the change. So just to give you some foundation and make everybody smile for a minute. Shelley and Alan were taking an art class, and they were doing their paintings side by side. And Shelley looked over at Alan's painting and said, "What are you going to do about all that empty space in your painting?" And Alan said, "Well, the teacher wants us to fill all the space. So I'm going to fill it with a bunch of Gobbly Goop." Today's talk is Gobbly Goop. Kathy picked the theme for this month, and it's called Dig Deeper. And last Sunday she gave us all these little shovels, remember? And her talk was inner strength. And as I walked in today, there was a penny on the sidewalk out here. It's pretty worn, but I bent over and picked it up, and I realized, in God we trust. I have to dig deeper to get there. But when I'm looking, I don't. It appears right in front of me. As Suzanne said in her meditation, the divine is always here. I have to dig deeper, and I have to dig under all that gobbly goop that I fill my spaces with. How many times have you felt hurt or wronged? And I love some of the things we use. Raked over the coals. Right? Stabbed in the back. Stepped on. I have a broken heart. My ego's bruised. Do you hear how we beat ourselves up? And when we feel all those things are happening to us, what do? We become defensive. And when I become defensive, I start to make up stories. I start to fill myself with gobbly goop to make myself feel right, to not feel wrong. My inner strength, if I want a connection with God, I have to dig under that gobbledygook. I have to stop making up those stories. On Wednesday mornings, we have a class that's called the Eye of the Storm. Not E-Y-E, I. Eye of the storm. And I love it uses a hurricane. And we know hurricanes here, right? We sure do. When a hurricane arises, two weather fronts are converging. And there's friction, right? And that starts the spinning. That spins the hurricane. And in the center, we know this too, in the center of that hurricane is the E-Y-E, the eye. And that's the point where the forces of the storms are in perfect equilibrium. So, my emotional hurricanes, do you know what that is? You know it, you felt it. My emotional hurricanes. Conflict in needs and wants and values that converge. They're not like yours. And so we allow friction to build up. We create that hurricane inside ourselves, inside our lives. But just as weather hurricanes have an eye, we have an eye, and ours is the letter I. And that's that place inside us, that point inside us, that when I can remember to drop in there, there is a stillness, a calmness, a peace, a clarity, a quiet. And life changes. Where does all that gobbledygook come from? Does it come from the God inside of you? Where does it come from? The outside world, correct? Yeah. And I want to tell you one of the biggest places it comes from, and that's the headlines. Headlines that tell us how we are supposed to be feeling. Listen to this. Tell me how this affects your emotions. Election day nightmare scenario that should terrify you. This one. Welfare payout statistics that will make your blood boil. What happens when you keep reading that? You're going to go right into it, aren't you? And this one, like 2 days ago, this so makes me laugh. Aggressive otter injures 3 in Florida. Remember, the people writing this are getting paid to write it. It's their job, isn't it? Have you ever just totally felt exhausted by every time you look at the news, the conflicts, the catastrophes, the problems that are out there? And then maybe I feel like, wow, I've just reached the maximum level of this issue. It's finally going to be over. What happens? There's another one that pulls me in. There's actually a name for this now, and it's called outrage fatigue. We become more and more outraged as we get drawn into these stories. And it's the social media. It's Google, it's Facebook. What they have is an algorithm that promotes things that will be shared. And the best predictor of things that will be shared are the ones that affect our emotions. And so the algorithms select the most outrageous content, regardless of social value or whether it's even true. Because the more of us that watch it, the more profit they make. And here's the thing. Our emotions are being shaped in ways that are making it harder and harder for us to change this world for the better. Because what happens when you get pulled into these stories? Do you ever watch one and go, how could this happen? And what does that feel like inside of you? What's that create inside of you? How about, how can they do this? What's that create? What do you feel? What's the emotion? Victim, anger. Oh, those poor people. If we're honest, we've all had those thoughts as we're pulled into these stories. Charles Fillmore, the co-founder of Unity, wrote this. Would you put that up, Andrew? People everywhere on earth are now realizing, as never before, that the well-being of this world rests with its inhabitants. That's us, guys. It is no longer a religious dogma or a philosophical theory that the destiny of the race is in the hands of man. This was over 100 years ago. This was over 100 years ago. This is our foundation. The destiny of the human race is in my hands and your hands. And it's time for us to dig deeper. It's time for us to connect to that inner strength. It's time for me to. It's time for me not to back down anymore. Tomorrow we honor Martin Luther King. Andrew, would you put that up, please? Use me, God. Show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, and what I can do, and use it for a purpose greater than myself. Can we read that together, please? Use me, God. Show me how to take who I am, who I want to be, and what I can do, and use it for a purpose greater than myself. This is what's up for me right now. So the question I've asked myself is, do I stand here on Sundays and do I bring you the years of study, of wisdom, of knowledge, and of experiences I've collected? 50 years as a yoga teacher, studying with the first masters that brought it to the country. Owner of an international consulting company. I traveled all over the world. It took me 3 years to become a licensed Unity teacher. It took 500 credits to do that. It took me 2 years in ministerial school. 12 years here. Numerous spiritual teachers and masters throughout the world, and many, many, many spiritual experiences. Am I going to keep watering this down? Am I going to keep playing small and playing safe? No, not anymore. And you're seeing the change in this church. And it is all based on Unity teachings and Unity Foundation. Marianne Williamson, and you all know this, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? And that's for each and every one of us. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. Each of you have such power in you. You have power to heal your emotions. You have power to heal your body. That's what this movement is built on. This is the essential Charles Fillmore. There are so many Unity books out. How many of you even read the Unity story? There's a lot of those. This is Charles. It is not I, but the Father in me that does the work. We hear that, we hear that, we hear that. Can I get my personality out of the way? Can I get my little ego out of the way? And can I start letting God move through me? Charles, I have found God. I must demonstrate God and to do this, I shall have no time to worry about what my brother is doing. Mind your own business. Stop gossiping. Stop saying hurtful things about people. And I grew up in the Catholic Church, and even if you thought bad things, it was a sin. Stop thinking bad things. Charles, everyone does what he thinks will bring the best results. If I can show him a better way and demonstrate it in my life, I shall have his attention. You can't change people by telling them what to do. I have to do it. I have to show it. I have to be it. Charles, the world is ready for demonstrations. 100 years ago, guys, the people are eagerly looking for those who can prove in actual works the presence of the indwelling Spirit, and we are going to do this in this church. People in here going to walk in here and they're going to feel God. They're going to feel that unconditional love. They do, but even more so now. This movement was built on prayer and healing. Myrtle, tuberculosis. She's going to die in 6 months. She lived another 40 years. She learned how to heal her body. Why do we call it woo-woo? It's our foundation. It's what we're built on. They did distant healing. They sat in a small room with a kerosene lamp, and they sent prayers out, and people were healed. Why don't we step into that now? Why do we say it's crazy? It isn't. It's who we are, and it's who we are going to be here. And you've seen the change start. Charles, his leg was 4 inches shorter than the other from a childhood accident. It was shriveled. 4 inches shorter. He had a brace, he had crutches, then he had a cane, and when he died, it was only a ½ an inch shorter. How do you grow a leg? Do you believe this? This is the movement we belong to. Stop playing small. The Fillmores produced a magazine called Modern Thought. Again, 130 years ago now. It encouraged spiritual progress, and it birthed this worldwide spiritual movement. How many of you have called Silent Unity? Yeah, Silent Unity, right. What did it feel like? What did you feel like when you got off the phone? Tell me, yell. Tell me what it felt like. Peace. Comfort. How many of you went to the Fillmore Festival and sat in that prayer vigil room? Put your hands up. Yeah, turn around, look at each other. And what did you feel? What did you feel? We talk God. We're doing this healing circle. It's the same thing they're doing in that prayer vigil chapel. Again, Charles wrote this. What have we been talking about? We've been talking about vibration, light. Again, from our co-founder. Space is filled with vibrations of light. Why am I filling mine with Gobbly Goop? Because when I do, my light doesn't shine. Charles, and light is the vehicle of intelligence. So it is a logical and demonstrable fact that space is vibrant with life and intelligence, and if I keep putting gobbledygook in there, I am not going to connect to that. Andrew, do we have that Martin Luther King? Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Are you willing to go there with me? Are you willing to say no to the darkness? And let your light shine. Stop covering up your light with the gobbledygook. Start loving instead of making up stories of why you're a victim, of who did this to you, what happened to you. You're in this room today because you have said yes, whether you know it or not. Your soul said yes. Jesus said, "The one who believes in me will also do the works that I do, and in fact, what? Will do greater works than these." We have within us the same divine that Jesus had. He taught this over and over again. It's time for us to stop playing small. And I'm not saying go out there and stand on, become a minister and say, my gosh, it took me 12 years to get up here and do this talk. But do it with your, thank you. Thank you. Do it with the people in your life. Do it with the strangers in your life. Catch yourself as soon as you find yourself going, poor me, or getting angry, or thinking somebody's against you. That's why we're doing this class on Wednesday mornings, and I'm going to be teaching it at night too. No one is against us. All that conflict is created. All those hurricanes are created inside of me. We have an affirmation. I have the strength to accomplish all that is mine to do. Let's say that together. We're going to do it 3 times, and each time we're going to own it a little bit more. Let me get out of the way. I have the strength to accomplish all that is mine to do. Again, I have the strength to accomplish all that is mine to do. Now I want you to say that to yourself. Own it. Breathe it in. So this week, and from now on, when you feel that hurricane starting to stir up inside of you, take a moment. Go be alone. And let go of all the gobbledygook that is covering up the loving, divine, perfect human being that you are. God bless you.